All right, welcome everyone today for today's guest speaker presentation. My name's Theodore here from the Institute of Holistic Nutrition. And today we have Dr. Lois with us, who will be talking about DNA testing. So Dr. Lois is the president and CEO of dnaPower Inc., and she is revolutionizing preventive healthcare by empowering people to make smarter diet, fitness, and health decisions based on their unique DNA. And she solved years of personal health issues by discovering a simple vitamin weakness in her genes and committed to bringing this knowledge to others. And with her today as well, we have Sabine, who is dnaPower's Director of Strategic Partners, and she is a CNP, so a graduate of IHN as well, and she graduated in 2018. So just quickly before I pass it over to Dr. Lois to introduce herself and the company a bit more and get into the presentation. We're going to basically do that. We're going to get into the presentation. If you have any questions, you can feel free to either hold them to the end in case it comes up, or put them in the chat, put them in the Q&A, and then at the very end, we will address those. And then there is also a giveaway for one live attendee who will win the dnaPower certification course to become certified as a DNA diet, fitness, and health coach. So very exciting. And that course will equip you with the expertise in applying DNA testing to your practice. So once again, welcome, Dr. Lois, and take it away. Very happy to have you.
Great. Well, I'm so delighted to be here. dnaPower has had a relationship with IHN for quite a number of years. We used to present in person in Vancouver when you did the in-person classes. And I love that you've got the big reach now to whole other areas with the program being online. Also delighted that Sabine is a graduate from IHN. We've employed quite a number of people coming out of the IHN program. I really like the philosophy and the approach of how the program is taught. So have been a big fan of your program for some time. At any point, if people have questions, you are welcome to reach out to Sabine. We'll have her email address at the end, sabine@dnapower.com. And really, we're delighted to be here. I'm also wanting to welcome Nicole Dietrich, who has worked with dnaPower, who's a digital marketing specialist with us, and is part of your program and cohort. And if you have questions, you might want to go to her after. And I think Nicole got inspired to go to IHN in part because of what she saw we could do through dnaPower, how it can change people's lives, and working with such talented people like Sabine who have benefited from that education. So what we're going to talk today is around how can you, in developing the ability to, your knowledge on nutrition, understand how you can build data-driven personalized nutrition plans through DNA testing. So I'd like to start just by, asking, and maybe you can fill me in as people respond to this in the chat, Theodore, because I can't see it right now on my screen. But I'm curious how many people have done a DNA lifestyle or wellness or nutrition test. And so please put that into the chat if you have. And then second, I'm curious if some of you are alumni or have come from other areas of experience and are using DNA testing already in the work that you do. And so I'd like to know that. Just it helps me gear a little bit of my comments to make sure that I'm speaking to your knowledge level. I'll probably try and address a little bit of both in terms of whether you're new to it or highly experienced in it. And there's always a fresh perspective to come, in terms of hearing how a company particularly does that. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about dnaPower. So we we're one of the first in the world doing DNA lifestyle testing. Started over 15 years ago, where a Canadian doctor worked in a genetics lab in California and ended up bringing that technology back to Canada and has been doing that since. So I ended up acquiring the company in 2015 and refounded it as dnaPower. And this market has absolutely exploded in the last number of years. So it's been a really exciting industry to be in. So what we're going to do, I'll tell you a little bit about my story, how DNA testing can really help provide some practical, clinically relevant insights for you, how the profile can help you to optimize their plans, how you can read the reports and see the recommendations, a little bit specifically on two hot areas right now, methylation and hormone genes, because that can be, so many people are coming now with issues that need to be addressed in addition to supporting their overall health. And then how you can add this into your practice as a revenue stream. So I was working in the healthcare industry, and I became fascinated in by DNA in 2002, when I was blessed to become the adoptive parent of two identical girls, Jasmine and Kaylin. At age 3 was the very first time when Jasmine asked me why she wasn't a boy. She asked me again at age 4 and age 5, and we just let her do her thing. And at age 13, my daughter became my son, Levi. They're now 23. And it's just been a fascinating journey to be on. The I've had essentially a nature nurture experiment going on in my home for over 20 years. And it's just been fascinating to see how you could have two people with the exact genetics. And in 20 some years ago, we thought genetics, was sort of a bit more of you inherit the genetics and clean slate in terms of the epigenetics. But I really started studying and learning about epigenetics and became fascinated by DNA, and have been doing this pretty much in some form ever since. In terms of my story, I was in the corporate world and doing a number of work there. I was an executive in my late 40s, and I looked, fit and healthy, but I was experiencing all of these symptoms: chronic fatigue, restless leg syndrome, weight gain, extreme periods, anemia, constant air hunger. So I was sent to respirologists, asthma specialists, gynecologists. I had a whole body scan because I was I was in such bad shape. I thought maybe I've got cancer. For a while, thought maybe I had ovarian cancer. And I ended up, so I saw probably about 10 different specialists over 4 years. I was finally hospitalized with zero iron left in my body, blood transfusions, my kids at home with a babysitter, with my husband at a time. It was out of town. It was horrible. A few months later, I ended up going to an event and hearing about DNA testing. It was actually, I have a second cousin who is a 3-time Canadian bodybuilding champion, and she said, "You have got to take a look at this. It is going to change the world in terms of how we look at health and fitness and diet. And because you have adopted kids, it's very important for you to understand that." Made sense to me. It cost a fortune back then, but I decided to do it. In the end, what I discovered, learned lots about my kids, also did my own, and discovered I have what's considered a fairly classic MTHFR, or vitamin B variation. And about 35% of the population have this, and it affects our ability to methylate and to absorb nutrients, and for the cell to get the B's and the iron and the oxygen. And it turns out all of these separate symptoms were part of that. And within virtually 2 weeks of starting to take vitamin Bs, which I must take every day for my health, all of these things went away. And I personally couldn't believe it was that easy to have solved my health problems. So I ended up deciding that I wanted to see how we bring this out to the world. And I'm really proud of the work that we do, because really DNA testing is about preventative health. It's not about sick health and how our medical system's set up. It's around targeting and using data and using science to understand more about our bodies and transform health outcomes for people before they get sick. And as you move into nutrition, it's difficult to know what diet is right for your client without really understanding their unique genetic makeup. In fact, every study that has ever been done is deficient, because if you didn't look at the genetic makeups of people and the biases of how their bodies worked, you're just getting a generalized population result. As we start moving into including genetics as part of the equation for research studies, we're going to get way, way better information. So vitamin B, doesn't work that well for piles of people because their bodies already processes and need it, and they pee it all out. But for people like me, it actually changed my life. I absolutely can't even function as a person without constant vitamin B in my system in order to operate. And there's simple little clues like that for many people in their genetic makeup that is a simple key to the roadmap to their overall health. So I hope you know some of these things, but there's genes for all kinds of stuff. There's genes just determine what foods you crave, and as well how your body manages fats, carbs, and proteins, which is of course always a big deal. Should I be on a keto diet? Should I be on a paleo diet? Should I be on a balanced diet, on a Mediterranean? It's hard to know, and the answer is always it depends, based on your genetics. So And again, just a little history, our diets and our DNA were adapted to different parts of the world. We developed certain genetics based on where our ancestors came from. So there's great fast fat processing genes for those who were in the Arctic, because that's what they survived on. There was a far cleaner diet when you look at Asians and different genes that developed for that. And Northern Europeans really had a lot of animal protein and dairy, and will more commonly have some of those genes then in their overall genetics. But some of the foods that we consider fairly typical, as you will all know in the program you're in, can make you sick without the right DNA. So some people can absolutely have lactose. And, I think sometimes when we get sick, we just pull it out as a matter of course. But there are definitely people who have no problem with lactose. The majority do. And our lactose has changed over time, which makes it a little harder to digest. So we just need to be more aware of that. And just because just because you have genetic variations related to lactose actually doesn't mean you can't drink milk. It doesn't mean you're allergic to it. It just means you might start feeling bloated or a little sluggish, or suddenly some inflammation develops. And where I noticed it, because I have a half variation in this, as I got into my 40s, I started putting on weight. And when I got, and was really, if I had a peanut butter sandwich and milk, which I loved as comfort food, I would like go to sleep. It was just my body couldn't process it. And so when I realized from my DNA I have some variations and cut back my lactose, suddenly I dropped the weight that I'd put on, in addition to having the Bs to now support my body. And I've really been in the best health of my life ever since getting into this business. Gluten, same thing. Some people have the genes, some don't. We test for all of those so that we can see, is it, a severe variation related to celiac? Is it kind of a secondary one, or is it more just a sensitivity? And it depends, again, for people, whether you've got that or not. So as you will know, if we don't eat the foods that we don't have the genes to manage, we see an increase in weight, illness, and disease. People often don't know where that's coming from. And it becomes much worse as we're eating more processed foods, refined sugars, GMOs, and products that our bodies really are not designed to manage. So we each have a unique genetic makeup that supports our road to health. So our goal then is to try and find that roadmap. And it's interesting because there's actually an interesting trajectory that can shift, and even making a few changes can make quite a difference to how someone's health is overall. And so what we're trying to do with lifestyle DNA testing is identify the potential areas where someone has genetic variations and what that might be in terms of the risk to health. So we're all unique, and if you've studied any genetics, you know that we are actually 99.8% identical, and there's only 0.2% that's unique. As a result, that's the part that we study. We have 3 billion DNA base pairs, which makes around 10 million variations in each human. And each person has around, at least 3 million variations we're looking at. So what we're looking to do here is study the ones, and there's very specific genes related to lactose or to fats, and find out where you have normal genes and where you have variations. So just again, what we study specifically is something called SNPs, or single nucleotide polymorphisms. And we look at the DNA chain and we see, what do you have at this particular spot where it varies or it changes. It isn't the same as the other side. So what is that variation? And then what might that have in terms of an impact in terms of your health? So, to use a little analogy, it's a little bit like a cookbook. So the gene is the recipe, and then you've got all these ingredients you put in. Genes create proteins. And what we're trying to do is, create a healthy human being out of it. So if you have one ingredient that is bad, it can change the whole recipe. Some variations are minor, but some can have quite a big impact. So if you've got a bad lemon gene, like don't make lemon pies, just avoid that overall so that you can be the healthiest you. So the main thing about genetics is that genes stay the same for your lifetime, and we have epigenetics, which sits on top. And so epigenetics and the genes are activated. So our epigenetics activate the genes, and it can work like an on-off switch or like a dimmer up and down. And so sometimes when there's, some genes, they work for a while and then suddenly they're not doing such a good job. So this is what really gets us into the field of epigenetics and how lifestyle impacts the performance of your genes. And so DNA isn't your destiny. It's actually the choices you make that impact how your genes are expressed. You've ended up inheriting a certain map, and now the goal is to navigate that map the very best that you can do. So we have this epigenetics above or on top, which affects how cells read the genes. And that's really what when we're doing the DNA testing, we're looking at where there are variations and then what epigenetic changes can we do to affect that. Because our genes are fluid and respond to everything we do. And really, these epigenetic factors are key. They are things like diet, exercise, sleep, stress, toxins, and vitamins. All of those are really important factors in terms of how our genes express themselves. And I will add, more and more research is showing how what we think and what we believe and our moods are also affecting the expression of our genes. So that's really a very holistic health perspective. We know through identical twins, believe me, I do, that lifestyle and environment are really key. Here's an example of identical twins. There's been lots of interesting studies that show how you can have very different outcomes. The one on the left, again, lots of sun exposure, smoked, and ended up having cancer, and so was dealing with cancer. The one on the right did not. So how you eat, exercise, as I said, think and feel can have a really big impact on your genes overall. And so we want to be sure that we're studying and taking a look at how to manage that. We know that there are finally some decent studies starting in the nutrigenomic space. I think the challenge you'll find is that there's not a lot of money in it. So you have to say, where can we get more of these studies to prove out the impact it's having on people. But this particular study is a good one where they put people on a ketogenic diet and others on a nutrigenetic diet. So they built the diet according to their nutrigenomics. And so they did that for 6 months, and then they did to get weight loss. And almost everybody will lose weight on a ketogenic diet. However, at the 18-month point, the people who were on the nutrigenetic diet had maintained the weight loss and had much better metabolic results in almost every area because in general it was healthier for them. Not everybody who goes on a ketogenic diet is it healthy for them. It depends very much on their fat genes. So in general, almost always your answer is the best diet you could put somebody on will be a nutrigenetic diet, a diet related to their genetics. And so what you're doing with this testing is putting diet, fitness, and health into your client's hands. So a little bit about dnaPower, and then I'll show you some of our tests and our tests areas. So, we feel we have been for a very long period of time, the most comprehensive diet, fitness, and health test on the market. We focus on over 200 SNPs that are tested. We were one of the very first in the world doing preventive health DNA testing. So we've got a lot of runway and experience in doing this. We continue to research the genetic variants, always working on the most valuable genes. We have a custom database, and we've really worked to make this friendly and accessible for people. And so we know that our clients, love this. They love what we do. So we do have a custom SNP panel, and we do what's called this polygenic scoring, where you analyze a group of genes, not just one gene. You have the ability to go and look at the individual genes, but when you get the group, somebody just needs to know, well, are fats good or bad for me? Well, it depends. There's multiple fat genes. So what we do is we've spent years looking at which is the combination that can give you the best sense in terms of your overall health about whether the answer to that question is yes or no. And we're, as we said, constantly researching. And what I would say is because of the background I came from, data privacy has been key to me from the start. So when you're, dealing with some other companies, there is a goal to buy and sell the data. And we know 23andMe got into some trouble for that, and it severely affected their business. But we always focus on how do we just put the information into yours and your client's hands, destroy the samples, and we don't buy or sell your information. This is around trying to help people be healthier. So in our reporting, what we do is we organize by 4 specific reports for diet, fitness, health, and brain. And we also produce a summary report, because what we've discovered is many people just want to know, tell me what the answer is at the end. But there's the ability to dive in to much more detailed information in the back reports. We look in those reports at these particular areas. So, diet management, weight, food taste, and supplements. So your vitamins, that's a critical one, of course, as nutritionists. There's always really important information in the power and endurance on VO2 max and your recovery rates, a bit on cardiovascular, heart and stroke. Health power is pretty essential too. We're discovering the power, of course, of detoxification, hormones, inflammation, and methylation on the body. And when you, as a nutritionist, know if there are variations in that area, the diet should change to feed those processes in order to be sure that those work as effectively as possible for your clients. We also look at some areas related to the brain. Alzheimer's is an interesting one because we feel it's very much the diabetes 3, and because it's about plaquing in the arteries in the brain, diet can have a huge impact in shifting that. So we believe that it is manageable when you know you have it and you realize that you must make diet changes in order to ensure that that does not impact health. And then a number of other areas we examine as well. So in our testing, what we've tried to do is say, okay, what's going to be the easiest way for a customer to understand this? So we've built it into green and red. And so where it's green, you have normal genes, and where it's red is where there's genetic variations that can, in fact, can create a predisposition for an area not to work as well for your body. We then provided a page of recommendations, and they're always food-based, and then supplements, and then perhaps some other suggestions, and then detailed pages with more information in terms of what people can learn. So again, we're trying to always come up with a simple way for people to read. In general, and we've got some exceptions to this, but generally where it's more than 50% red, it generates a recommendation, and that just says this is an area to look at. You have the ability as a practitioner to go behind to see, okay, it's not that red, but is there perhaps another gene that might be playing an overweighted role in this? But our goal is for most people, when they're trying to understand how to improve their diet, they just need a ballpark to work in. And this gives you the playing field, the map, in terms of which choices are going to be most effective for this person to support their health. So here's an example of two women trying to lose weight. One had grown up where fat is bad. I need to be on a low-fat diet because that's what the industry was saying, and so was on a high-carb diet. The other was the reverse, where, oh my God, carbs are bad, can't have that. I'm gonna, I'm gonna be on. I need to, I need to focus on carbs or fats, whichever. In this particular graph, the first line is carbohydrates, and you can see this one's all green. And down here is some of the fat genes, and you can see it's a bit redder down here. So what we have is this person here who was actually on a high fat, low carb diet, exactly has the reverse genes, put on 30 pounds, didn't know why, felt they were dieting and doing the right thing, but had the wrong foods. This is the reverse situation where this person has weak carb genes and great fat genes. Classically, somebody who is great on a ketogenic type of diet and was believing that fat was bad. So it was really, what works for them was exactly opposite. Both of these, through the support they got through their nutritionist, ended up losing that weight. Actually, within about 2 months, once the diet was, the weight started to come off once they adjusted their diets. Here's where you can see, again, in a little bit more detail. We look at carbs, insulin, cholesterol, fats, protein, and protein weight response. And these are a selection of genes. This is somebody who's probably genetically predisposed to somewhat of a higher fat and lower carb diet. And because it's red on protein, and most people, this is the case, need solid protein in their diet, at least 20 to 30% from the caloric intake. So when you have this information, it really helps refine the types of diets and programs you might be putting together for your clients. There's another section on food tolerances. In this case, we see that the lactose is red. And we cannot tell you how many people we have that have fully red lactose that have had lactose all their life, but then don't understand why they're putting on weight, have inflammation, pain in their knees, and can't believe it because or have psoriasis or skin conditions and just couldn't believe that this actually would be the cause. So, what you get with your clients is evidence that pulling this out, that here's your green and red evidence that this is not for you. And so it gives you the data that helps your clients to stay on the programs that you develop for them, and you get less recidivism where people drop off because, well, maybe it's not this. How do I know? Maybe it's something else. You don't get that when you've got the DNA test. You can remind people, no, remember, this is an issue. And if you do decide you want some lactose, be careful or be very thoughtful. Maybe there's a substitute you can use. Maybe there's some other products you can take to help you digest that if you have to have your cheese or something else. And then it's same thing in the gluten. Maybe it's just a slight sensitivity. This person probably has one of the more minor sensitivity ones, but it could be playing a role because, as you know, once people start getting sick, it tends to compound. And suddenly you become allergic to everything because the gut gets out of balance and the microbiome's off. You're getting some leaky gut and you got a whole thing that you need to be solving for them. So, we've had people who solved lifelong eczema issues once they realized, oh, okay, it is lactose. And there's such big cultural influences on what we eat that it's hard to get people to change. And most of us are now a little bit of potpourri of genetics from different ethnic backgrounds, where food was and our guts, the body developed in different parts of the world. And now we're in this environment where we can have pretty much anything we like. So there's a whole panel on vitamins. This is critical. Of course, this is the one that really changed my life in discovering my MTHFR variations. And when you see this, especially if you're if you're working with women who are over 50 and going to menopause, we don't process Bs as well. And so it's really important to support and maintain the health. Once I figured this out, I actually had no menopause symptoms. I think I've had like one half a hot flash as I've moved through all of that. So it made such a difference finding and I was so sick with my periods, horrific bleeding and cramping and everything. And then I discovered all of this as I was slowly heading into perimenopause. And really, I haven't suffered at all with any menopause symptoms. So there's just so much power in knowing this information. Here's another critical panel as well, is on hormones, detoxification. This is on hormones, inflammation, and methylation. So these are such powerful parts of the testing that we do. If someone has detoxification issues, you can recommend a diet that increases the number of the level of vegetables and food that support and improve the detoxification process. When you see the hormone panel and you see big red lines like the one here, you know that is if somebody, first of all, if they're younger and they're on birth control, you need to be careful. They need to think about what birth control do they want to use. If they're wanting to get pregnant, what are the steps that they need to do in order to get pregnant? If they're dealing with PCOS, which is becoming rampant, and issues again with moving into menopause or other, this will show you that there's some things that they need to be aware of because their body isn't synthesizing this properly. And then depending on how it metabolizes it and then helps to excrete it out of the body, you can get a buildup and it can throw the hormones out of balance. So there's just really powerful information that can help with both diet and helping people to know that that there might be other things affecting their weight and problems. It could be, again, the birth control they're on. It could be the HRT, hormone replacement therapy, that they're on. There's certain things that could be having an impact. And you just get much more deep insight into it with all of this data. So you, of course, get the action plans here. Here's what you do. We know you can use that. I hope you're all using ChatGPT because the power for food and recommendations now is incredible. You can actually even put the variation on the genetic in there and ask, what should I do for this particular genetic variation? It's very good. The accuracy is very good for chat on that. So you're going to have lots of different tips of what you can do. So When you're interpreting the reports and you get used to doing this, like I can virtually scan this and immediately know, okay, oh, there's in the first page, okay, oh, they've got a number of variations related to diet. They're probably going to have to be on a cleaner diet. They won't get away with fried foods and a few other things. I can see that there is a salt and a lactose issue here. We probably need to bring some salt down in their diet, pull out the lactose. Gluten is great though, so I don't have to worry as much about some carbs, a few carbs, but not all of them. And I need to look at some of the vitamin panel here for you. And if any of you are planning to then, also sell vitamins, this becomes a very powerful way to demonstrate why these are the vitamins that someone should be looking at. So again, you get all of the action plans. The person takes these home. It gives them an ability to go through that. So really, that was just sort of a quick introduction into, there's so much information that's in these reports. The key thing is that a person takes through about 5 to 10 different points that can help them as they manage their health for a lifetime. I'm going to do just a very short little dive into hormone health and methylation, just because those are really hot topics at the moment. I'm not sure if you're studying those in your program, but I just want to show you again the power of what you can learn with this information. So this is a list of the SNPs and the genetic variations related to hormones, fertility. And so what we looked at is with these particular variations, what are some of the variation impacts that can occur? And why does that matter? And how would that impact somebody for fertility or PCOS? So these are like important charts that you could be working with. Again, as you're trying, if someone comes in and presents with some more complicated situations, you can support that. Or if they aren't presenting, you can give them the heads up. Just be aware if you do go on to, synthetic birth control or hormone replacement therapy, you have a couple genes that might not, manage this as well. So be aware and monitor it more closely. Another process is called methylation. And this is, and again, I'm not sure if you'll cover it, but it's the way there's a chemical reaction that creates a methyl group and links it to DNA. The methylation can play a big part in turning on or off genes, and it's really important to your cells and nutrients. It's like this master switchboard for many of your body's important functions. So it can control functions such as detoxification, energy production, gene expression, neurotransmitter balance for mood, hormone processing, immune function. Really important. So if you see someone with a lot of genetic variations, fortunately, the fix is actually it's really eat a lot more bees. And people like me, as much as, I'm actually really into, yoga and other things, I can't manage on a vegetarian diet. My body really just has such difficulty trying to process the bees. Here's an example of this whole methylation cycle, folate and methionine, and the genes that we test for. So we test for all of these genes, and we can sort of see, is there a particular part of the cycle that may not be working particularly well for you? And really, there was no way to test some of this stuff previously to know where might some of these problems be arising. So this is, really cool information you can learn. These are the genes that we test for. We have got one of the best methylation tests around. And again, just a powerful way you can be supporting somebody if you choose to get that into your practice. And of course, what you're trying to do is say, how can I now create a meal plan or program for somebody where we can build in the folate, the Bs, and the different supplementation, et cetera. You may need to test for homocysteine levels to make sure that's not an issue. And you need to make sure you're using methylfolate and methylcobalamin because that is already pre-methylated and it's more absorbable. As an aside, if I look at the fact that my issue is actually around B9, so folate, had I known this and my body was way out of back, I'd been on birth control for way too many years. I had been on antibiotics for acne for way too many years. And had I understood many of these things, perhaps I would have been able to get pregnant. I went through all the fertility treatments for years. And of course, that's an expensive and hugely stressful process. Life ends up how it's supposed to be. So I am a super happy adoptive parent, but you end up on your own channels. But I actually now know how I believe I would have been able to solve some of my fertility issues had I understood the importance of this. So um, just showing again, what you'll learn is here you've got green, red in terms of where the methylation areas are weak, recommendations to follow, and you can go back and see what the actual genotypes are and then do further research should you choose on some of those particular areas to see if there's something else that needs to be supported. So again, just great information overall. Quick case study here. This is someone who came to see us in his 60s, suffering from knee pain. That would be about half of my friends at the moment. But it was causing him to stop exercising, gained a lot of weight. And, he was eating out for most of his meals because he was divorced and like burgers and fries and because it was just easy and cheap, and was now looking at knee surgery because he believed that that was what was holding him back from being able to exercise, which is something he absolutely loved to do. We discovered, some variations, not extreme, but actually one in LDL cholesterol, which is really no fried foods because it creates this plaquing with the fats and things. So it's really linked to the APOE plaquing gene. And that saturated fat was also a problem. And he needed to get that whole saturated fat down, needed more than average protein and omega-3s. And he potentially had an issue with lactose, pulled that out of the diet. And then it's just amazing, again, because someone has the data that they will actually follow that, what's recommended. And in switching to this anti-inflammatory foods, taking out the unsaturated fats, or sorry, taking out the saturated fats and some of the salt, B vitamins, omega, he found he could start to exercise, didn't take long. In 12 weeks, he'd lost some weight, cut back on pain medication that was also now clogging up his liver, and was able to get back to running, gym, lost more weight, and, really was able to get back to the life that he should have. Because we all are looking for health span, not lifespan, and to be as supported as we can. Lots of different diet recommendations we had, but you guys know about all of that. So last couple things just to talk about how does our program work. We tried to set this up to be a fun, accessible brand. The goal is to make customers feel comfortable with learning their DNA, because the first thing, if you're sitting with someone and you say, oh, we should really do a DNA test on you. If they don't know anything about this, they go, what is that going to tell me? And it can seem overwhelming. It can seem, oh my God, what am I going to learn? And I do want to say we focus on the DNA you can do something about. We don't focus, if you do 23andMe testing, on a lot of the rare disease. They're usually single gene testing that they do there. They don't do the polygenic scoring. And if you have your body working well, you don't trigger the rare things or the things that can provide a big problem. You just stay healthier longer. And so the whole goal with what we do is preventative health, getting people to understand this information. None of it's scary. The only one a wee bit scary is the Alzheimer's one, but that's because it's also an LDL cholesterol in both panels, but that's because it relates to this plaquing function in your body. And it's just important to know about it because it's all that more important to switch your diet. And in case you guys, I don't know, Chris Hemsworth is a classic where he has something in what's called the APOE gene, E4E4, which is the worst you can get for plaquing. And he has just gone completely into health to say, I am going to treat this as the most important thing I've learned about my life, and really going to focus on health and diet to make sure that I am creating a healthy, long life. So there are some great people that are out there advocating around why this is actually the most important thing that you could learn. So how do you do it? In our case, simple cheek swab, use the highest quality one on the market. It can, there's a little bit of a solution in there. It stays room temperature. It lasts for months. The tests are great for ages. People order their tests, send the sample, you get your results online. In the kit is just a welcome card, an envelope to send it back, and instructions. Just so you know, we can use 23andMe and Ancestry data as well to produce the reports. They don't give all of the information. So there's some areas, particularly carbohydrates for some reason. They really are weak on that, and insulin, which can be super important for nutritionists. But if somebody has the data, it's way cheaper to take that and run it. So that's an option. We are really focused on partners. I mean, you are the one working with the client on a long-term basis. Our job is really to produce the information in the best way possible to make it the easiest possible for you. So we have a partner package that we can provide. Uh, we try to make the testing as easy as possible. People swear by it. Our Sabine's whole job is to make sure you're looked after and that you have the information you need to be able to do to support this in your practice. And we have just an amazing customer service team. We really want this to work for you and to support the people that you're with. I will say though that we do offer two different ways to do it, just so that you're aware. And Sabine always goes through all of this with you. You can stock on consignment, so you don't have to pay for anything up front. We don't bill you until we receive a swab from you, and so that means and so then you and your customer can both get the results, or just you get the results. Both of those things are possible. Um, and or you stock it at your side. So consignment where you have it, or we do it all for you. And we just ship it, we ship it out to your customer and look after that for you. It's just slightly different pricing. This is sort of our base standard pricing. We charge $4.99 retail for the 5 reports, and ours includes a nutritionist health consult, which we expect to be you. So we sell it to you at $3.99 wholesale. You can charge what you need to your clients for that consult or whatever. And that's Canadian pricing. So that's about 300 US roughly. And so, there's take 25% off of all of this pricing or more based on the horrific Canadian US exchange rate at the moment. So if you're from the US, our tests are becoming a bargain for you. So, and we so far have had no problems in terms of shipping and things. If someone doesn't have the money, you can do just the dnaPower, so just a single text, or you can do the total power and upload the results. So these are just an example of the wholesale pricing. We have discounts if you order, more tests or want to stock more. And, we can set you up in a whole different range of ways to make it work for you based on where you are in your practice. But we recognize to buy the stuff up front would be too expensive, so we're happy to consign it to you if that helps, and then for you to support it from there. So we do a certification program, written a textbook, got online PowerPoint videos to walk you through, ebooks to support, marketing collateral to support you as well. And you have a DNA diet, fitness, and health certification, coach certification that comes out of that. So it takes, I'd say, anywhere from 6 to 10 hours to go through the videos. You do have a 100 question test that you need to go through just to show that you've got the information you need. We also support you whenever you need it. Once you're through the program, when you've got something that comes up, I still have some of the most talented naturopaths I know who will say, Lois or Sabine, can I get 5 minutes with you? I just want to double check this. And, really have become extremely talented in how they're using DNA to sleuth out the issues for their clients. The certification program is $5.99 Canadian. That's 4 something US. And if you just want to take the course on its own, $2.99 Canadian. And we are giving away a certification course based on people who've attended the call at the end. So we invite you to email us, Sabine at dnaPower.com, to learn more if you're interested in this. This is the way of the future. This is having a profound impact for people. This is how you customize clients' diet plans to support the weak genes, because we certainly all none of us inherited the same sets of genes, other than my kids and a few others. And even then, it's so different. And really what we're doing is trying to see what we can do to learn about people's unique genetic makeup to support the road to health and really help them become the healthiest person that they can be. So with that, I will stop. I'll hand it back to Theodore and just see if people have any questions.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Lois. That was excellent. And yeah, I think what we'll do is we will do the questions first, and we'll go over those, and then we can do the giveaway.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so We've got a few questions here. We'll go one at a time. So, will my DNA test also help to indicate the similar genetic issues that my mother, sister, and my daughter, or each one must have their own test?
Right. Excellent question. We have family bundles where it's cheaper each one you buy. When you inherit your genes, so your mother has, the genotype, two letters that influence the expression of that particular SNP, and your father has two. You in the kids, one option from each of those comes in, and there's about a 25% solid odd that, out of four, each one will get a different combination. And so the odds are you are likely to have some genetic issues the same, and there are some that don't. So without actually seeing which genotypes you inherited, it's harder to know. What you do know is that your mother tested and she has two of the poor variations. You will absolutely have inherited one. That you can tell for sure. So that's the only thing you can absolutely know for sure in terms of what's inherited, is when you know someone already has two variations, the child has to get one of those. Oh, so will the test give I'm seeing there the solution, the whole diet protocol, or will we have to go back to our own information resources? You will have to go back to your own information and resources. We are giving you the roadmap for 70 different areas related to day-to-day health. Some of the information can even sound conflicting at times. So it'll sound like, you've got great fat genes, but you've got a problem with the APOE genes related to plaquing. And that's just how unique our bodies are, and that's how the research plays out. It hasn't gotten into highly complex combinations. So you need to use your judgment to support your clients. And you will need to use your resources definitely to create meal plans. I mean, we're looking at some AI options right now for meal plans, but I know you guys have tools as well to be able to use those. So yes, there's a lot of work you need to still do as a nutritionist because every person is unique. Are they 5 years old, 50 years old, or 85 years old? What are they presenting for symptoms? How have things come through? So it will give them the generalized recommendations, but you will need to do some work as well.
Amazing. And it says, how is a cheek swab DNA test different from a live or dry blood cell analysis?
So what you're doing is getting the cheek cell to sequence the DNA and to get the actual SNPs. And let me just see here because there's some differences. So a live blood analysis, if that's what this was about, and a dry blood sample, you've got a decrease in quality on a dry blood sample if you're trying to get DNA from it. I would personally wouldn't do that just because I think I don't know if you'd get enough quality. And then if you're doing live blood analysis, that's a very different thing. Of course, you're looking at the red blood cells and how the shapes and things are. If you can do spit samples, right? So that's the most reliable, the 99.98% is going to be your buccal swab, your blood, actual blood, or saliva in terms of getting accurate information.
Amazing. And then what company are you using for the DNA testing itself?
Well, we are a DNA testing company, right? But in terms of processing the sample, we had our own lab. We ended up going to a lab that has massive more throughput because they were able to stay with the latest equipment and the latest upgrades at all times. So we have a clinical genomics center out of Toronto. They've been our partners for years. They are fantastic, and they give us a super high processing rate. Everything else, though, is dnaPower.
Amazing. And is your course online and conducted via Zoom, or is it pre-recorded videos that we follow at our own pace?
It's pre-recorded videos. You follow at your own pace.
Amazing. And what about people who are non-secretors, their DNA not being in their secretions?
I've only had potentially one in our entire time. And that was in my first year, and I had a sequencer, so we were able to do something different to sequence. So I haven't had it for quite some time.
So
So
sounds quite
yeah,
rare. Yeah.
it can be quite rare. We just haven't had an issue being able to get that at all. I'm thinking, Sabine, I can't remember any. Occasionally, though, what happens is, you're not supposed to eat or drink for 30 minutes before doing the cheek swab. Otherwise, we're like they're trying to clean food out and process it all, and even water waters it down. So occasionally, the lab, if they can't extract enough of the DNA, they'll run it twice, and every few hundred maybe someone has to re-swab because of course they're doing it at home. We don't know quite what they're doing. You would be doing it with them, so you're going to get much higher results generally. So very occasionally we have to have somebody re-swab, but we do that all at our cost. So it's really just a time delay then is the issue.
Yeah. And can you talk a bit about privacy and handling client info?
So the system is built up. I was actually in tech for a number of years, so it's all separated so that the name and the report is where the information comes together. So we will register so. First of all, we use all of the protocols for encryption and double encrypted uh, secure databases. When the information goes to the lab, it is, oh, I didn't keep one right handy here. It is just a test tube, and there is zero identification with a person. In our company, we could care less if you want to call them Mickey Mouse. Like we don't, if somebody wants to disguise it. But I will tell you, I had a family who did all fake names, sent them all in, and then couldn't remember who was who, right? So, that if you're going to do it, be sure you know what you're doing. But we don't care what name you put on it because we only collect the data that we need. We can't do anything with that. Like no one, if they hacked our database, could take that information and then trace it. The odds of them being able to trace it with that amount of information back to you are slim. You can through 23andMe because you can get the signature prints off of, Ancestry. Well, we don't share that with anyone. So there's zero way. They did some murder stuff through people there, but there's no way to be able to do that with ours. There's just no data. It's not collective anywhere. Nobody could see that. So let me see. So encryption, only barcodes go to the lab, and then in our system, the name comes together with the barcode to create the report. And so you'll have that report information. But our belief is, and nobody could do anything with the data other than how we put it together for you.
Yeah, wonderful. And what is the time frame for processing the test?
So once we receive the swab, it will take generally 2 weeks to 3 weeks. Although our lab has been able to run a bit more frequently, we aren't down yet to 1 week, but we're getting closer to that. So it's about count on 2 to 3 weeks. If there is something that's occurred, like a Christmas, break, and the lab closes down, it's sometimes 4 weeks.
Very good.
Oh, and the strike. Oh my God, the Canada Post strike was a disaster. So,
Yeah, that threw a wrench in a lot of things for sure.
yes.
Yeah. All right, wonderful. Well, if anybody else has any questions, definitely put them in the chat or the Q&A right now, but it seems like we've gotten all of them. So thank you very much again, Dr. Lois and Sabine as well for being here. Just to reiterate, I know Sabine, you put it in the chat, but for anyone that's watching the recording later, in case you need to contact Sabine, or want to get in touch with her, her email is Sabine, Sabine, at dnaPower.com. So thank you very much, Dr. Lois and Sabine, for being here. It was a pleasure. Learned some wonderful things and great to see.
I want to add, I'm going to,
Yeah.
Sabine, can you please create a code IHN 100? And what we'll do is if somebody does want to sign up for the certification and test, which is $5.99 Canadian, we'll give you another 100 off for $4.99. Or if you just want to do the DNA testing, which is generally $4.99, you can get 100 off to get it for $3.99. So Sabine, well, I just threw this at you right now. So
I'll Theodore, maybe I create it and then I'll send that to you, Theodore, and then you can.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic. Thank you guys very much.
Great. And that will be good for the month of March.
Fantastic.
Terrific. Okay, great. Delighted. Thank you so much for everyone for attending. And I love your program. nutrition is the way of the future so that we stop using our medical system and get people healthier. And then it's, we get a whole shift and get people owning their preventative health. We would love to be part of that journey for you. But I really wish you the very best in your courses. I love what you learn and what you do. And may good food and health help change the world.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lois. Wonderful. And yeah, thank you so much again. That was wonderful. And yeah, and the combination with the DNA testing makes it, just that much more powerful and effective as well. And dialing in what needs to be done for the clients for sure. Amazing.
Terrific. Thanks so much.
All right. Have a wonderful day. Thanks, everyone.